Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time around, we're taking a look at the afterword of the power of habit, and we're going to try to see if we can learn anything about how to actually, make those changes in our lives.
Yeah.
What really hit me about this afterword is how it uses these personal stories.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it helps ground some of these concepts in the real world. It helps to see that this isn't just theoretical. It
Mhm.
can actually impact our lives.
Right, right. I mean, the one that really jumped out at me was this woman who found solace in Alcoholics Anonymous
Uh-huh.
after reading The Power of Habit. You have to wonder, what was it about the book
Yeah.
that made it click with her?
Yeah, maybe it was the understanding that those habits, even the ones that maybe weren't serving her, were built through this predictable process.
Yeah.
And so maybe just knowing that she wasn't alone and there was a way to understand her struggles, the book gave her that. And that can be really powerful.
It's like it gave her, yeah, like a new lens
Yeah,
to look at it through.
absolutely.
And then there's the story of Tom Payton. He was able to lose weight by, doing these really small things each day, like weighing himself every morning
Hmm.
and trying to walk more.
It's amazing how those small things can really add up. Um, it's those small wins that can have such a ripple effect on our overall well-being.
Right, yeah.
And I think, it builds momentum when you see that progress, so it keeps you motivated. And in fact, there's research from the National Weight Control Registry that really supports this idea of those small
Oh,
wins.
yeah, that's right. I remember reading that in the book. They found that, consistently checking in, right? That's kind of what Tom was doing by weighing himself. It's
Hmm.
actually a big part of, keeping the weight off long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Consistent self-monitoring, it's key.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes it's not just about, like, building new habits. It's about changing the ones that we already have, right?
Absolutely, yeah. The afterword mentions Eric Earl, who was a personal trainer. He was trying to quit smoking, and he was having a really hard time, even though he had, tons of willpower.
I know, right? His story was so interesting. What he ended up doing was, replacing the smoking habit with something new,
Uh-huh.
like meditation.
Yeah. Yeah, he finally realized that that was what he needed to do.
Yeah. What struck you about his journey? What was the big takeaway?
Well, I think it's that he didn't give up. He was like a scientist. He just kept experimenting with different ways to approach it until he found something that actually worked.
Like he was a habit detective, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. It makes me think about those keystone habits that Duhigg talks about.
Yeah.
How would you explain those to someone who's maybe just tuning in?
Well, keystone habits are those habits that kind of have this ripple effect on other areas of our lives.
Yeah.
You change one keystone habit, and then it starts to change a bunch of other things too. It creates this cascade of changes.
So, with Eric, it wasn't just about quitting smoking, right? It was about putting this new keystone habit in place
Right.
that could potentially change everything.
Exactly. And this connects to research from James Prochaska, who studied the stages of change. He found that people are more successful when they kind of move through the stages,
Uh-huh.
from not even thinking about changing to, "Oh, okay, maybe I should change," to getting ready to change, to actually changing, to sticking with the change. He found that people are more successful when they go through those stages
Yeah.
rather than trying to, jump right to the end.
So instead of focusing on willpower, it's more about just understanding that process
Yeah.
and kind of going with the flow.
Right, and realizing that change takes time.
Right, right.
And it
It's
has
not
to.
an overnight thing. And there's that great example in the afterword about dessert
Yeah.
and how parents, even if they mean well, they can kind of accidentally create these unhealthy habits for their kids.
Uh-huh.
And he talks about this family that goes on vacation and their son starts to connect every meal
Uh-huh.
with getting dessert.
Such a classic example, right? Because it shows that predictable patterns make those habits stronger. We see it all the time. There's a cue that triggers a routine,
Yeah.
and then that routine leads to a reward. So, for that kid, the cue was the meal,
Right.
the routine was eating,
Yeah.
and the reward was dessert.
So it really shows you that you got to be careful. What are the rewards you're attaching to things?
Yeah. But it's also interesting because unpredictable rewards actually make habits weaker.
Oh, really?
So in the book, Duhigg talks about how that family changed things up. They didn't always give the kid dessert after every meal. Sometimes they do something else fun, like play a game or go for a walk. And that change in the routine disrupted the habit loop.
Uh-huh. So it's not about taking away the treats altogether. It's just about where they fit in.
Exactly. And you see this in Tom Payton's story too. He talked about those times when he'd slip up with his eating habits. And instead of letting those slip-ups derail his progress, he learned to plan for them. He just saw them as learning experiences.
Like he built resilience, basically.
Yeah, he built resilience.
Yeah.
And, thinking back to the woman who found recovery through AA, I thought it was interesting how she talked about the role of pain in creating change.
Oh, yeah. She said something like, sometimes you have to really feel the discomfort before you're actually ready to change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Discomfort can be such a powerful motivator because it's when you realize that the pain of staying the same is actually worse than the fear of change.
Yeah. It's like you reach a tipping point
Yeah,
where that discomfort becomes the thing that pushes you forward.
exactly. And it can lead to amazing things, like what we saw with the students in Pratt's music class.
Oh, yeah. Pratt Bennett, he's the music professor who uses the power of habit to help his students reach their full potential. It's so cool how he encourages them to just like experiment with their habits, almost like they're hacking their own lives.
Yeah.
And the results are incredible. They've seen improvements in their study habits, their sleep, their social lives. And what I find so interesting is that Pratt doesn't just teach this stuff, he lives it too.
Yeah, he actually used these same ideas to increase his own productivity by changing his email habits.
Yeah.
He realized how much checking email was affecting his work,
Yeah.
and he found a way to make it work better for him.
So it just goes to show that these ideas, they can work for everyone, whether you're a student or even working for years. And it's never too late to like start playing around with your habits and see what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like he finally took control,
Absolutely.
instead of letting those habits run his life.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what this afterword is all about. Like all these people took charge just by understanding how habits actually work.
Right. It really highlights that we're not, like, stuck with our habits. We can change them. And it doesn't have to be this big, overwhelming thing.
Right, like those small changes, right?
No, those small changes, like what Tom did with the weigh-ins and what Eric did with meditation, they can really add up over time. It's all about understanding the science behind habits and then using that to make positive changes.
And it's a journey, right? It's not like you just flip a switch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are going to be setbacks along the way.
Yeah.
You're going to slip up sometimes, but that's all part of the process. It's what you learn from those setbacks that really matters.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about before with planning for failure, right?
Right.
Like Tom, he built that into his plan. Those slip-ups, he didn't see them as failures. He saw them as opportunities.
Yeah, yeah. He built resilience.
Yeah.
He understood that setbacks are going to happen. That's just part of changing. And that's a big part of making those changes stick.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also about knowing when you're ready for that change. Like the woman with AA, sometimes you have to get to that point where you're just like uncomfortable enough.
Right, right.
Yeah.
She made a good point. Discomfort can be a real motivator
Mhm.
because it's when you realize that staying the same is actually more painful
Right.
than actually changing.
Then the fear of changing. Yeah. Yeah. It's like you reach that tipping point,
Exactly.
and then that's what pushes you over the edge.
And it can lead to incredible growth, like what we saw with the students in Pratt's class.
Oh, yeah. All the students who just experimented with their habits, it's like they were hacking their lives.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It is cool, that sense of ownership, like they're in control.
Yeah.
That's so important for making those changes last. Because when you understand how something works,
Uh-huh.
you're more likely to stick with it. You're more invested.
It becomes personal. It's not just something someone told you to do.
Exactly. It's not about following some strict set of rules.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the ideas behind habits and then using those ideas to figure out what works for you.
Mm.
What works for your own life and your own goals.
Like find your own way.
Yeah, find your own way. Experiment.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to try something different.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say, like, what's the one thing, the big takeaway from all these stories? Like, what should our listeners keep in mind if they're, thinking about changing their own habits?
I think the biggest thing is that change is possible. No matter how ingrained those habits feel,
Uh-huh.
you can change. Like whether it's your health, your productivity, your relationships, you can change those patterns and make your life better.
It's a really hopeful message, right? Like, you're not stuck.
You're not stuck with your old habits.
You can change.
Yeah. You can make your future different.
And it doesn't have to be a huge, scary thing. Even tiny changes,
Right.
like switching from soda to water or taking a 5-minute walk every day.
Those can make a huge difference over time.
Yeah, those small wins, like you were saying before, it builds that momentum. It keeps you going. And, it's also important to be kind to yourself along the way.
Absolutely. You're going to mess up. You're going to have setbacks,
Yeah.
but that's okay. It's how you react that
Yeah.
matters.
Right. Learn from it. Try something different. Keep your eye on the prize.
Exactly. Keep that long-term vision in mind. And remember, you know, maybe even embrace those uncomfortable moments,
Yeah.
those pain points.
Yeah.
They can be opportunities for growth.
Yeah. It's like those challenges.
Uh-huh.
They're not roadblocks. They're like detours.
Exactly. It's all about shifting your perspective,
Yeah.
realizing that even those tough times, they can lead to something better.
So we can change.
We can change.
We have the power.
We have the power, one habit at a time.
One habit at a time. That's a great message.
Yeah. It's about realizing that you're in control
Uh-huh.
and taking those small steps
Yeah.
towards the life you want to live.
It's pretty amazing to think about like how much power we have to actually change our lives just by changing our habits. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the afterword of the power of habit, I'm curious what really stood out to you? What resonated from these stories?
What I found really interesting was how different everyone's path to change was.
Yeah.
It shows that there's not like a one-size-fits-all solution. It's more about understanding the basics
Yeah.
and then figuring out what works for you.
Right. It's like we've been given all these tools.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to figure out like which ones work best, right?
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be super complicated either. Sometimes, the smallest changes can make a big difference.
Like what? Give me an example. Like what could someone start with?
Well, I mean, it could be something as simple as making sure you drink enough water throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's something bigger, like finally getting a handle on procrastination.
Uh-huh.
But the key is to start small and be consistent. And don't forget to celebrate those little wins.
That's a good point. And, we learned from Tom and Eric that messing up is part of the process. Don't get discouraged if you have a setback.
Right, exactly. It's about progress, not perfection. Just be patient with yourself. And remember that those small steps can really add up over time.
I don't know about you, but this whole deep dive has got me feeling really hopeful. Like we can actually change things.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
When we understand how habits work, it's like we unlock this potential to create the life we want.
So for everyone listening out there, here's something to think about as you go about your day. What's one habit you'd like to try changing? And what's one small thing you can do today to start moving in that direction?
Remember, even the tiniest step can make a difference.
That's it for this deep dive, everyone. Keep exploring those habits and keep unlocking your potential. We'll see you next time.